Today is Friday, March 11th. We'll update you on another round of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine and tell you which cities are now being hit the hardest. Also, new data shows mistakes in the 2020 U.S. Census, who was undercounted and overcounted, and how that can even happen. Plus, why you'll need to wear a mask on any spring break flight, an important reminder for this weekend that could impact your sleep, and a happy hotline, how little kids hope to make a big difference in your day. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. The highest level talks so far between Ukrainian and Russian diplomats ended without even a hint of progress. Ukraine suggested a neutrality proposal with security guarantees from world powers. But Russia rejected it, saying it would not back down until Ukraine was demilitarized and its government toppled. Yesterday, Russia's foreign minister said everything was, quote, going according to plan. During the talks, the two sides also discussed a 24-hour ceasefire, but did not come to an agreement on that either. So, fighting continues in Ukraine, especially in the cities of Mariupol in the south and Chernihiv in the north. Meanwhile, the 40-mile-long convoy of Russian troops northwest of Kyiv seems to have broken up. But troops are still moving closer to the Ukrainian capital, just through other routes, like through forests. A U.S. official told the New York Times the Russian military is capable of completely surrounding Kyiv in a week or two, and the battle for control over the city could take a month or more. Ukraine says the country has already suffered $100 billion in damage just in the last 2 weeks. So even more aid is coming. The UN World Food Program said it will help up to 3.1 million people. The European Union assigned nearly $550 million for humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Japan pledged $100 million. And as expected, the U.S. Senate passed the government funding bill that includes nearly $14 billion of aid for Ukraine. The House already did the same, and President Biden is set to sign it soon. By the way, I spoke with a Ukrainian man who was forced to flee his hometown now that it's under attack. He's still in the country, though, and you'll hear his firsthand account right here on The Newsworthy tomorrow on our special edition Saturday episode. It turns out the 2020 census wasn't totally accurate, and now some advocacy groups are threatening to go to court. The Census Bureau says it undercounted the number of Latino, Black, and Native American people in the United States, and it overcounted the white and Asian American population. On top of that, it undercounted children younger than 5 and overcounted adults older than 50. So even though the overall population count was fairly accurate, the demographics were off. This is all based on a post-census survey. So how do miscounts happen in the first place? Well, there could be an overcount if someone owns 2 properties, like a permanent home and a vacation home. With undercounts, they most often happen when people live in group homes, like dorms, prisons, or barracks. Even though these mistakes were caught after the fact, the 2020 census is not going to be adjusted. The Bureau says the results are fit to use for their main purposes, allocating where federal money gets sent, determining each state's share of congressional seats in electoral college votes, and redrawing voting districts. But some tribal, state, and local officials are considering ways to challenge these results. They want corrections that could be factored into future funding decisions especially. Whether they end up going to court or not, the Census Bureau says it will use the study and others like it to improve the 2030 census. The planning for that one has already begun. Well, this weekend, millions of Americans are in the path of another strong winter storm. It could bring rain, snow, and extreme winds to the eastern half of the U.S. Already, this storm brought heavy snow to much of Colorado and Kansas, like up to 13 inches of snow. And starting tonight, it moves into the Ohio Valley and the part of the country the National Weather Service calls the interior east, with more snow. Even more of the country will deal with extreme temperatures, too. Today, everywhere from Minnesota to Texas will see temperatures 20 to 30 degrees below normal. And tomorrow, there will be unseasonably cold weather, even in the deep south, where it's actually been unseasonably warm the last couple of weeks. So with the changes, some strong thunderstorms are possible. Conditions are supposed to be the most harsh tomorrow in the Northeast. There, people might be dealing with blizzard conditions because of heavy snow and strong winds. Stay tuned. Well, if you plan on traveling in the next month, you'll still need to wear your mask. The TSA says it's extending its mandate through April 18th. After that, things might change since the CDC says it's going to revise its recommendations. But in the meantime, masks are going to stay mandatory on airplanes, airports, trains, train stations, buses, ships, subways, taxis, and more. Airlines and travel groups now say they'll comply with the government's order, even though they challenged these rules last month. It seems this year's flu vaccine is not a great match for the most common forms of the virus this season. New CDC data says up against the most common strain of the flu going around, the shot is only 16% effective. Although that's the effectiveness against even mild cases. And the CDC says if you do get the flu, the shot could still keep it from getting severe. Either way, the good news is it's been another mild flu season so far, much tamer than flu seasons used to be before COVID-19 came around. Experts say it's possible the surge of the Omicron variant of COVID-19 kept the flu at bay, since that made more people wear masks, stay distanced from each other, and more during the winter months. Still, some infectious disease specialists say this latest report should be a wake-up call that there's a need for a better flu vaccine. Pfizer and Moderna are actually already working on developing one. They want to see if the same technology they used to create the COVID-19 vaccines could work against the flu, too. Although, even if they are found to be safe and effective, NBC News says they likely won't be available until late 2023. We have more news still coming up, but first, let's take a quick break to thank our sponsor. When I first started this podcast and business, I had high expectations for myself, and I realized I wasn't always as easy on myself as I would be, say, on a friend. Well, I realized the most important relationship any of us can have in our lives is with ourselves. So I got proactive and I started therapy. I have learned so much from it about myself, about reacting to situations, about living the life I want. I actually think everyone can benefit in some way from therapy. And it's not necessarily just for bad times in your life, although it can be helpful then too. Well, BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. Give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp online therapy. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and the Newsworthy listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/newsworthy. That's BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/newsworthy. Well, baseball is officially coming back. After a 99-day lockout, MLB and its players finally agreed to a deal that paves the way for a full season. Just yesterday, we told you the commissioner canceled more games and pushed opening day out to April 14th. Well, instead, the league now says it can be April 7th, just a week later than it was originally. And spring training camps open up this Sunday. There will still be 162 games. The 1-week delay will just be made up throughout the season with doubleheaders. But get ready to see some changes from this new deal, like a longer postseason, more advertisements on player uniforms, and more. One of the main stumbling blocks was the international draft, and reports say as part of the deal, the two sides will keep negotiating on that point until July 25th. The first major American banks are pulling out of Russia because of its violent war in Ukraine. Big Wall Street banks Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase say they are winding down business there. Both of them do limited business in that country already, but now they're officially closing up shop. The only major U.S. bank that still has a big presence there is Citigroup, which said it's, quote, assessing operations in the country. Remember, Russia's invasion has also fueled an entertainment exodus. 3 major American music labels are the latest to leave. Sony Music, Warner Records, and Universal Music Group all said they've stopped work in Russia while donating to Ukrainian relief efforts. Even though so many nations and individual companies have pulled their money and business out of Russia, President Putin is claiming it's a good thing. He just told Russian government officials, quote, in the end, it will enhance our independence, self-sufficiency, and sovereignty. Well, after more than 3 years, the Jussie Smollett saga has come to an end, at least for now. The former Empire star just learned his sentence for faking a racist and homophobic attack against himself. A judge sentenced him to jail for 150 days, so that's about 5 months. He also got a 30-month felony probation and has to pay $120,000 in restitution to the city of Chicago, on top of a $25,000 fine. But even after the guilty verdict in December and last night's sentencing, Smollett still insists he did not stage the hate crime. In fact, he stood up in court and said he was innocent and, quote, if I did this, that means that I shoved my fist in the fears of Black Americans in this country and the fears of the LGBTQ community. It may not be over yet, though, because Smollett's lawyer vowed to appeal. All right, get ready to spring forward. Yes, it's that time of year again when most Americans lose an hour of sleep. Daylight saving time begins. So that means you probably need to set your clocks forward or, your smartphones will jump ahead automatically for you by 1 hour at 2 a.m. Sunday morning. Even though you may get a little less sleep this weekend, the days will start to feel longer since the sun sets later in the evening. Critics argue having to change the clocks twice a year is simply outdated and unneeded, and/or that messing with people's sleep routines impacts their health. Well, love it or hate it, daylight saving time is still the norm in much of the U.S. Only a handful of U.S. states and territories do not recognize it, including most of Arizona, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Feel Good Friday, when we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, a message from our sponsor. When it comes to looking good, Stitch Fix has you covered. Say goodbye to wasting all your time and energy on endless browsing online, and hello to fresh picks curated for your taste and your size. Whether you need date night dresses or cozy loungewear, Stitch Fix can help refresh your look. And you have options. For the least work on your part, just schedule a fix and a stylist will send you 5 pieces that fit your style, size, and price range with no subscription required. Keep what you like and then return the rest. I love this option because you can actually try things on and get that extra help from a stylist. But there's another great option if you'd rather choose items yourself, and that's called Stitch Fix Freestyle. It's an online shop built just for you, based on your preferences, so it's kind of like having your very own clothing store. It's the easy way to get items that are just right for you from brands you know and trust, like Madewell and Sanctuary. Get started today by filling out your free style quiz at stitchfix.com/newsworthy and take advantage of free shipping and free returns. That's stitchfix.com/newsworthy to try Stitch Fix. stitchfix.com/newsworthy. Now back to Feel Good Friday. With all the heavy news happening, who couldn't use a pep talk right about now? Well, if you call a new hotline, you'll get it. Plus, get this, it'll come from a resilient group of kindergartners. Pep Talk is a free hotline from students at a small elementary school in California. It was put together by their art teacher, Mrs. Martin, and a local artist. Mrs. Martin says she was inspired by her students' positivity, even through rough times like the pandemic, wildfires, and just everyday challenges of being a kid. So if you call Pep Talk, you'll hear a menu of options. For example, if you're feeling mad, frustrated, or nervous, press 1. Or if you need to hear kids laughing with delight, press 4. But if you press 3, you'll hear a bunch of kids sharing a variety of positive mantras like, be grateful for yourself, or, bro, you're looking great. Mrs. Martin says she hopes the hotline will give callers a little break from whatever they're going through. And it seems to be doing just that. She says just 2 days after launching, the hotline was getting up to 700 callers per hour. So if you need a little boost, dial Pep Talk at 707-998-8410. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with our special edition Saturday episode. Then join us again on Monday for your next news roundup. For now, thank you so much for listening and have a great weekend.